morning. As many of you have tried my homemade 17th century ginger beer, I decided today I'd do my first ever actual video that's longer than a few seconds. So, because of lockdown, it's pretty hard to get our hands on bottled water right now, but pretty soon it should start filling back up in the stores. Right now I have some tap water in a 5-gallon bucket, which you don't put the full 5 gallons in, otherwise it'll boil over. I have not tested my water for the accurate amount of salts that are required, so it's not going to be salted correctly using tap water. Now, to make homemade ginger beer, you will notice that I am following some of the original instructions where I'm going to use ground ginger, some fresh ginger. Now this is a really large piece of ginger. Ginger right now is extremely large in the stores, probably because all the regular small ones are taken. For the sake of home brewing, it does not matter how woody your ginger is because we're going to be cutting it up fine using a chopper, and it's just not relevant for the process. So it's okay that it's large. Most recipes you do want to worry. And molasses will give you kind of that slightly metallic sweet flavor. Regular cane syrup. Brown sugar, which is basically toasted sugar that's partially caramelized, which will give it a sweet, more nutty flavor. I am debating still, I haven't even decided, maybe I'll use some malt to make it more beer-like, or maybe I will use honey to give it more of a honey kick. Have not decided yet. Maybe I'll use a little of each. I'm going to attempt to do this in as few pauses as possible, but I don't want to bore you with all of the chopping and just adding of ingredients. But that is basically what I'm going to do today. It's going to be an experiment, and when we try it for the first time, I will be experiencing it for the first time because it is an experiment. So right now I'm going to cut up the ginger. I'm going to put it in the chopper. Then once that is done, I'm going to start boiling the water, or I'm going to start the boiling now, really, but it's going to take a while to get there. And then we'll start adding ingredients. One more thing, which I would probably do after the ginger, but I would rather do it before I pause, is for every pound of a dry sugar, this is a 2-pound bag, you're going to get 1% alcohol. So this is in part why I'm going to use a substitute such as honey or the dry malt, because that will give me more sugar for this batch. And part of the reason, I do have enough ingredients to do more than just one beer, and so this way here, this will allow me to brew twice. Depending on how long we're in quarantine for, I may desire to have more than one drink. Okay, we are now paused. Okay, I'm back. I just got through chopping up the ginger, and it is now all mixed up, and I'm going to just dump it right into the water, and this is going to act as part of the flavoring and to give a little kick, as well as some health benefits to this brew. This is part 2. Apparently my phone had shut itself off while I was chopping, and I lost the continuity of it continuing the same video. So right now it is still heating up. It's about 100 degrees right now, which is not enough. While it is heating, if you add sugars, they may start to burn on the bottom of the container. So what you can do if you want is continuously stir. Pick a sugar that is more in its raw state, like the pure cane syrup. And if you keep stirring, if it does start to caramelize, you're just adding more flavor to your beer and you're not getting a burned flavor. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to repause, hopefully not so long that it times out and I have to do a part 3. I'm going to start I'm going to start adding the less sensitive sugars first, and then I will turn off the heat. I will then add the rest of the sugars, make sure they're evenly distributed. Then once it's up to boiling, I will add all the gingers, the powder, and the fresh. I may even start the fresh while it's reaching boiling. I haven't decided yet, just to give it a little more time in the pot. Then once it reaches boiling, because of the style of beer this is, we do not have to let the boil last any length of time. Once it reaches boiling, all the bacteria is dead, and it is now safe to consume. The reason why when you make regular beer it has to boil for about an hour, give or take, is because you're trying to get all the flavors extracted out of the hops that you put into it and the other types of gruit. But with the ginger, you really don't need a lot of time for it to absorb that flavor. I decided to use a video editing software, and thus I'll be able to push it all together into one video. And so it'll just take a little longer to upload, but it'll be easier on a viewer if they decide to watch the whole thing straight through. Last minute I decided, I would really rather beer than mead, so I went ahead and added all 3 pounds of the malt extract, and thus it's going to be about 6% alcohol, give or take a little, because some of the pounds are liquid, so it's actually probably going to be a little less than 6%. And so right now we're at about 150 degrees. So as soon as it starts getting close to boiling, around 210-ish, I can't remember if it boils a little early or a little late. It's been a while since I've home brewed. Once it gets really close to boiling, I'm going to have to constantly stir it. And I'm about to add the ginger now. And I have to use 2 hands for that because it still has the chopper in it, and the chopper could fall out into the boil, which we do not want to have happen. Then I'll add in the powdered ginger, we'll stir all that up, and let that kind of continue to heat with the water. Once you reach about 180 degrees, it starts getting hot enough to start killing off all the bacteria, but we're going to go all the way to boil for that extra safety during the quarantine mode that we're in. But I would do that anyway, so I'm kind of, I can't remember the technical word for that, but superfluously? I can't remember. Anyways, needlessly, that's the easier word. I'm going to needlessly go to boiling like I always do anyways. Okay, so I'm going to do that next. Now up to 180 degrees, which is right at sanitation level. I'm going to let it continue to go all the way to boiling, and I am going to have to remain focused, keep stirring, and turn the heat off to prevent it from boiling over, and maintain the rolling of the boil for like just a minute or so to get the foam to go down. If you've ever cook a lobster and you get that white foam that comes up to the surface, it's a similar kind of protein when you homebrew, and that foam will want to boil over your pot. So you just gotta have to keep an eye on it, and once that happens, then I'll let it sit for a second or two, turn the heat off, and then I will cool it rapidly, put it in a fermentation bucket that has been thoroughly sanitized. It is currently sanitizing right now with sanitation liquid, and then I'll cap it and put the bubbler on it and fill that with some really cheap vodka, bottom shelf, to keep the bacteria out. Some of the alcohol in the vodka will come out, and it'll be basically distilled water at that point. And then after like a week, I will add just a little bit more of the vodka, make sure that it stays sanitary and inhospitable for bacteria. And then it'll get to sit for another, well, after the first week, you're supposed to transfer it to a secondary, which will help remove a lot of the sediment in there, some of the yeast fallout. I haven't decided yet if I want to do that. Maybe I want to leave it a little yeasty for the extra nutrients. But odds are I'll probably filter it because most people don't want that in their beer. So I will probably, after 1 week, transfer it over to a secondary and then let that sit for 3 weeks so that it's ready in 1 month.